Welcome everyone. I'm really excited for this presentation, and just to point something out, there's not a lot of text on here, and that's for a reason. Is I didn't want you to be kind of worried about reading the whole slides out. It's more about pictures and me talking, so hopefully that's okay. So a little about me. I'm Hamad. I work for a consultancy firm called Credera. So we specialize in tech, business transformation, martech, engineering, and a whole load of different things. You think of it, we do it. And I've been an engineer for 3 years. Now, I've also come from a similar route to you guys. So I went to a boot camp for 12 weeks, and then I joined Credera as an apprentice. Previously to that, I was in sixth form. So I was studying aerospace engineering and decided it wasn't something I'd want to do going forward, especially writing assignments in uni. That wasn't for me. So I just went to a boot camp, learned to code as I was doing it beforehand. Outside of work, so I am a techie through and through. So I love to code even outside of work, and I love to I'm very passionate about helping people get into tech and just mentoring them. So I do that quite a lot outside of work. So I've got a QR code there. If you scan it, it'll take you to my website where it has links to all my social platforms. And also on my website, there's a contact me page where you can submit any questions, queries, even after months. I'm more than happy to kind of answer and help out where I can. So that's a bit about me. So this talk, I reached out to Alice that I wanted to do one, especially from someone who's come from a boot camp and then has been in the industry for 3 years now. And the things that I was actually worried about, the expectations for a junior developer, what am I just going to be on my own or things like that? And what do I need to kind of practice? I'll also talk about building your brand, and it's quite important. I'll come at it from a consultancy point of view, but also just in kind of in-house development as well, how important it is and how it impacts your career. And I'll finish off the presentation with kind of tips for starting out as a developer as well. So in terms of expectations, I'll go through kind of what's typically expected, but then I'll also kind of give you guys something to kind of look at and take note for. So the first one is really obvious, but I want to highlight this one because it's not about programming solving skills, because once you learn to code, a lot of it, you'll hear this so many times, it's more about researching and being able to kind of take a problem and take someone's vision or an idea and build it to life. In consultancy, a lot of the time when we go in, clients are a bit unsure on how to tackle what tech stacks to use. They have this vision or an idea where they want X, Y, and Z, and they've got this problem, and it's more about, okay, analyzing that, breaking it into steps, breaking it into goals, and it's more about having that mindset of taking something that's not technical and producing a technical backlog of items to kind of work. And also kind of researching, once you pick up a ticket, are you able to kind of go and resolve this and analyze, is there a better way of improving or reusing the code, especially when it comes to UI with React. It's a lot of kind of trying to build as many reusable components rather than kind of having custom components. Obviously, there is times where you have to use components which are custom, but you've got to try and maintain the code as much as possible. So in terms of kind of getting better at it, I'd recommend a couple of websites. So LeetCode, you might have heard of it quite a lot. It does get mentioned, and for the things that it gets mentioned for, I don't quite like it. So you'll hear a lot of adverts about if you want a job for Google, Microsoft, and stuff like that, just use LeetCode, and that's not. I don't really agree with that, and the reason for that is, even if you don't want a job there, or you've got your own ambitions, try using LeetCode, because it's more about understanding the algorithms, getting better at them, and also it's already got problems, and it's more about researching and trying to figure out how to come up with a solution. The other one is less kind of popular, it's Code Wars. I really like Code Wars because it's more of a competition based on how little code you can write to fix the solution. So it gives you a problem, again, like leak code, and you kind of try and solve it. And it's more about getting better with your code as well as kind of researching on Google, because at the end of the day, programming is more about trying to figure out how to fix something, and you will never ever have one solution for everything. Even if it's the same problem, the solution will be different. I haven't seen it in 3 years of my career where I've had the same amount of code for two different problems, or two of the same problems, I should say. So try and use Code Wars. It's actually quite good. The second one is time management. Now, when it comes to software projects, you will have a lot of deadlines, a lot of expectations, and it's more about managing them as well as managing your time. So a typical project will continue on a 2-week sprint. So you kind of have your sprint planning, and then you have your 2 weeks of kind of delivering. So you could have, we'll deliver 10 major features in a sprint. Now that is an ambitious goal. Or you could have, we'll deliver 2 features and we'll fix 6 different bugs. And you could just be working on helping with the feature, or you could just be fixing bugs. And you have to maintain that in terms of your time management and planning out your calendar, which is where I'd recommend Notion. And I absolutely love Notion. And they have not sponsored me to say this. I'll kind of make that clear. Notion is great because you can customize your templates, whether that's planning or using Kanban boards, or having, if you've got external things that you do, just having them in order is actually a great way. And the way I plan is a little bit different. So I add all my meetings in my calendar. So on a Sunday evening, that's how I spend my Sunday evenings. I plan my whole week out. So that's from Monday to Friday and Saturday, Sunday, because I have a lot of other commitments and also social stuff as well. So I add all my meetings in, whether that's Scrum, Deep Dive, and any other meetings that I need to have. And the reason for that is there's just one thing. If you've got 6 hours of meetings, now as a junior dev, you won't have that. But as you progress through your career, you'll have more meetings in your calendar. And managing them is quite important in terms of, if you've got 6 hours of meetings and you've planned 8 hours of work, that's not a realistic goal, and you will end up actually doing a to-do list is a waste of time. Whereas the case would have been, if you actually planned for the 8 hours, for 6 hours of meetings and 2 hours of work, you would have better understood how to-do list works. And also you actually spend less time faffing around in terms of what's my next ticket, and also what do I need to work on next. So I'd recommend adding all your meetings in. The second thing is split out the features. So for bugs, I just tend to say, I need to fix this bug, or I just need to do X, Y, and Z. But when it comes to building out features, I have a lot more in-depth to-do list. So that can be kind of building out the feature, but then creating the whole skeleton of it. So that can be, just the whole components that I need, and then pulling in the data can be another to-do list, to-do task, and then various actually CSS, adding that in, and various other bits that you need. So that kind of helps me trigger actually to get this feature fully built. By the end of the sprint, I need to do X, Y, and Z, and that actually sets out how much time I need to spend the sprint. So it's a recommendation, but there are not one to-do list fits all. So see what works for you, but that's something I'd recommend. The other thing that's actually quite good in terms of getting your head around is how you work with the team and the communications you have. And the reason for this is a typical software team. Now, it can be totally different. I've been on projects where it's been mainly engineers and just a couple of non-tech people, but a lot of the time you'll have a product manager, you'll have developers, you have UI designers, and your communication skills play a massive part. And the reason for this is, coming from a front end development point of view, you'll have UI designers who will have some knowledge of coding, but not a lot, and they'll design something that's not feasible. And you being able to communicate that with them rather than saying, actually, we can't do that, but actually giving an example of this ain't possible because of X, Y, and Z is a better way of, rather than just saying, oh, that we can't do that. But also you'll have clients or stakeholders who are not techie, and they just want a product, and they they don't really understand the behind the scenes, but they understand like what they want out of the product. So actually explaining to them in demos of, we've done X, Y, and Z, we've added testing, which they won't see the pros of because they've not actually seen any features delivered, but actually spending some time writing tests is code quality and maintaining code. And explaining that to them is quite important. So something to work on. Now, I was trying to find what's the best way of doing this, but the only thing I can suggest is requesting feedback. So when you've been on a project, whether that's 1 week or 2 weeks, if you're on a project, if you've delivered some things, just request some feedback and then take action on it. A lot of the time I see people requesting feedback in when it's performance cycles, and you have to remember a lot of the people will have 30 to 40 different feedbacks to fill, and then they'll start off writing them and it's great, but when it comes to the 20th person it will just become generic. So split them out in terms of whether you want to request it every month, every 2 months. Just request regular feedback and see what they're saying, and just analyze it with your team. How do they want to work? Whether they want to have meetings on X, Y, and Z, or they just want to communicate through written communication. So that's something to think about. And the final thing is being able to see the bigger picture. As a junior dev, you will come in and you'll work on the silo engineering team, because all the engineering teams will have like a lead engineer who will protect you. Hopefully that's their job basically, and hopefully you get a good lead developer. But their vision and they'll be in a lot of meetings. They will have a lot of kind of responsibilities on helping you guys out, protecting you if you've got any issues, being able to speak to them. But what you need to be able to do is see the bigger picture in terms of what the actual product vision is, what we're trying to get out of it, what other team members are doing. So getting a good aspect of what a UI designer does day to day, what a product manager does, and feel free to kind of add meetings in. When you join a project, add in like a 30-minute catch up, introduce yourself to each of the relevant team members and be like, hey, I'm a junior dev, I've just joined. What can what do you do day to day? I'm fairly unfamiliar with this role. So just ask them, and you'll see a lot of people will be more than happy to kind of chat about it, because the good side of technology is people like to chat about themselves. So they will tell you almost everything, and they will add some bragging rights, I'm not going to lie. So we've talked about a lot around, what to expect, but one of the key things is around building your brand, and it's where I'm going to talk a lot around my talk, because it's helped me to build my career, if I'm honest. So building your brand is more around the conversations and the actions you have will change your personal brand. And something to think about is how you want to be perceived by others. So if you've got a issue, or if you are struggling with something, are you someone who will be like, I've got this issue and I've got X, Y, and Z solutions for it, but I'm not sure where it's going? Or will you be someone who's like, I've got this issue, I've got no idea what to do, and you've literally done no research, you've done nothing, and that can be perceived as actually you need handholding, and that can actually be a negative impact on your career, because when it comes to performance cycles, people will be actually, we're a bit unsure on this person because they need a lot of support in terms of handholding, and they're not researching, or they're not kind of being proactive in coming up with solutions. Your personal brand is how your colleagues perceive you. So it can be, whether you chat to them day to day or whether it's a one-off. Think about how you're having that conversation. What is it that you're talking about? And it plays a huge part in your career. So whether you've done some amazing piece of work, that can be a really good feedback in performance cycles where they've been like, actually, this person has done really well, and I'd recommend them, whether that's going for a promotion or doing something else. So in terms of building your brand, it's network beyond your team. So when you come as a junior dev, you'll be in the silo team, you'll be working with them, but try and network beyond them. That can be just adding like schedule calls, like I said, to just have a chat, introduce yourself. And it's something like at Credera I've really enjoyed, because whether it's you could literally be sitting next to a CEO or CFO, I've had that regular times, and they're more than happy to have a chat. Now, different companies work differently, but it's actually a really good way to kind of get yourself known out there. And also, something else around the networking issue is figure out who you are and who you want. And that might be condescending, but I've attended a lecture where it said, think of 3 words people want to perceive you by, and write a statement out of, when someone hears your name, what do you want to say about them, and try and add them 3 words in there. And finally, ask for feedback. Now, when it comes to building your brand, there is no people to suggest how you can improve than your colleagues, because you work with them day to day and you kind of interact on a lot of different occasions, and they kind of know how you kind of talk on meetings and how you kind of chat through written communication. So it's actually quite important for feedback. So the final thing is around tips for junior developers and when you're starting out, what to kind of do. So learn the basics well. When it comes to software, terminology is very, very important, because you'll have your demos, you'll have your stakeholder meetings, which won't have as much technical, but when you're having deep dive sessions with your team members, having that good understanding of terminology and actually having the fundamentals of programming, it can lead quite a big chunk of your career progression. And then say yes to relevant opportunities. Now I've highlighted, like, put it in bold for relevant opportunities. The reason for this is a lot of the time junior devs are very ambitious, and they will say yes to anything that comes up. But something you need to have a think about is, will this help me in my career progression? Is this something I want to do? And is it something that actually I'm interested in and I want to learn more about it? If it's something like, oh, we really need this help, are you able to, we really need this thing, getting done, are you able to help? But you've got a ton of different things that you've already said yes to, then it leads to a lot of not great work. And it's more on the saying of less is more, where if you've worked on one thing and that thing is come out to be really well, that can have a major impact than loads of little things. The other thing is look for a mentor. Now, mentors are amazing. They've got so much more knowledge than you have. I've been a programmer for 3 years and I've still got a mentor. And the reason for that is they've got 10 to 12 years more experience than myself, and they know the industry really well. So if I've got something that I'm a bit conscious about, then I'll go to them, I'll be like, hey, I'm having these doubts, what do you think? And they don't have to be at your company, so they can be external people. A lot of people will be more than happy to have a chat about different conversations, different topics. So be open to having conversations and just reach out to people in your LinkedIn network, which brings me nicely onto networking. So as a junior dev, one of the hardest things is to get your foot in the industry. I found it very, very difficult because I wasn't the most outgoing person. I was very nervous when it comes to doing something for the first time. And being able to network and just be like, hey, I'm a junior dev. I'd like to know what you do day to day. Could we have a chat, go for a coffee, um, and see what they're doing in their companies? And more often than not, you'll find out that they're actually hiring, and you'll actually get a lot more reward from it because they'll actually refer you. Um, it's happened a lot more times than you can think of. People I've mentored, I've said to them, just go network, go and set them target. You need to meet 3 people before our next meeting, and they've actually met more people and found an opportunity. So it's more about, getting yourself out of your comfort zone and being able to speak to people. And the final thing is plan. And planning is so much more important, and I can't stress it enough. You'll get more things done. You'll know what you're doing. If you're having a chat with senior members and they're like, oh, what you working on? You can be like, oh, I'm working on X, Y, and Z, and refer it back to your plan. Whether that's like a written to-do list or virtual, please plan, because it'll help you a lot more. And that's literally the overview of the talk. What I really wanted to do was answer questions, because I can't get an assumption of what is it you're looking for. But these were some of the things that I was a bit worried on when I was at a boot camp. So I wanted to highlight these and then answer any questions that you guys had.
Thank you so much, Ahmad. That was really, really helpful. But yeah, if anybody wants to start popping some questions in, I'm sure even things like day to day, like what are like your sort of day-to-day tasks? I don't know if you wouldn't mind answering that one, Ahmad. Like, I guess like I know no day is the same, but what would you say a typical day is for a developer?
So my day to day, as a consultant, as a consultancy firm, I work on different clients. So it's one project at a time, and my days are stand up. That's every day. Then I'll have a delivery deep dive session. So that's more around if there's something that's a stakeholder has said, oh, we want this, then the BAs will have a chat with me and say, what is this possible? Could we do this? How long will it take? And we'll have all them discussions. If there's any coding issues, then we'll have that. And then I'll go on to my other days and just code away. There are other meetings that I have. So, refinement, looking through the backlog, see what the work's coming up, defining tickets. But a lot of my day is more around having the meetings with senior folks, and then having time to just code on whether that's bugs or building out features. So yeah, that's typical day, I would say. And then because I work for a consultancy, I have internal responsibilities as well. So this year I'm leading the graduate training program at Credera. So my time has gone into kind of seeing what it needs doing, bringing people together for the lectures and various other bits and bobs.
Great, cool, thank you. So Anne did ask a question during the presentation. They've asked, what were the similarities and differences between the bootcamp and the apprenticeship, and would you recommend doing both?
So the difference between boot camps and apprenticeships, there's not a lot. So boot camp is a 12-week long, and then you go on to work. An apprenticeship, now it's different for different, whether you're doing it through a boot camp or you're doing it through your company, it can vary. But the apprenticeship I did, I spent 12 weeks at boot camp, and then I went on to work with my employer for 12 months initially, and then my contract got extended because I stayed on. And during your apprenticeship, you'll have various different KPIs that you have to meet. So that can be have they learned how to do TDD? Can they write tests? Can they build? Can they write sufficient code? Do they have the knowledge of deployment? And you have to write assignments on it. Now, if I was to do it again, I probably wouldn't do an apprenticeship. I'd just do a boot camp and then go into a job. And the reason for that is I spent a lot of my time writing assignments to explain everything that I was doing, whereas I could have used that time to learn more in terms of other tech stacks. And it goes back to the reason I didn't go to university. I didn't want to spend time writing assignments. And in my first year, I actually ended up doing that. And it's the reason why I had feelings that I wanted to kind of continue my apprenticeship and get a degree, but then ended up not doing it for that exact reason. So it depends. If you want a qualification out of it, I would say do both. But if you're not too fussed about getting a qualification, then a boot camp is sufficient.
Great, thank you. Sarah's asked, "Hi, Hamad, really useful presentation. Thank you. Would you say you have to be techie to start with to enjoy your boot camp / job as a developer?"
Sorry, I didn't understand that question.
Sorry. Basically, do you think that you have to be? Were you like really into technology before you did the boot camp, or do you think you can be? Or do you think you have to be techie to do a boot camp or be a developer? Or do you think it's a route that lots of people could sort of take, I guess?
A lot of people can take this route. From my experience, whether that's at Credera or externally, a lot of people have had that career switch. So we've had apprentices who have joined who were working as music teachers or pastry chefs, and they've kind of switched careers. And it doesn't matter about your background if you're interested in programming, and that's what it ultimately comes down to, because programming isn't for everyone, I would also add, because it can have its good days and bad days. You can be stuck on a bug for 3 days and absolutely get nowhere with it, or you could have 10 minutes and it's a quick fix and you're smiling and you're like top of the world. And it can vary. The good thing is there's so many sites online now where you can just try it out. So you've got stuff like Free Code Camp, Code Academy, and you don't even need an expensive laptop with the top specs, because you've got virtual editors like CodePen where you can spin up an environment and just try it out. So I'd recommend just try it out, see what you think, and then spend the time into looking into bootcamp. And what you'd get out of it.
Great, thank you. David has said that there's too many tools for web programming. Do we need to learn new tools every day? I guess, like, how do you keep up with the new and emerging technology?
So I have this debate every day with a lot of different people, and I don't think it's about learning every tool that comes out, because if you look at the history of the web, it's been a lot of HTML, CSS, and PHP, and that has been dominant in the industry. Everyone has been using it until React came out, and then everyone switched over to React, and that has been going for a very long time. And if you look at the investment and the funding behind React, there's quite a lot, and it's here. I would safely put a bet on for the next 5 years. So if you're looking at what to learn, look at what's being used in the industry, because that's here to stay. So there was a hype around Flutter for quite a while last year, and it's kind of died out. And the reason for this is a lot of junior folks who are looking at it, it's like the next big thing and trying to learn the next big thing. But I would say 90% of the next big thing fails, and a lot of people run out of funding. Whereas the things that have been maintained by a lot of major companies, so you've got Facebook, or I should say Meta, who kind of fund behind React, and it's quite a safe bet, and it's used within a lot of different clients I've seen. So look at what's being used within the industry, and then go with that. That's probably your safe bet rather than learning the next big thing.
That's really good advice. Thank you. That was really good. Is the user exception test difficult? How UAT to do it in your delivery?
User acceptance. So so every ticket has user acceptance. So that can be, we want this feature to do X, Y, and Z. Now, when you start implementing it in, you'll get feedback from client and stakeholders, and they will be like, actually, this works really well, but we'd like to do X, Y, and Z to it as well. And they want a bit more of, and the feature kind of develops and the ticket develops. So what you start with on a user acceptance completely is half the time is different to what you end up with, because clients will have a lot of different ideas, a lot of more improvements to make on it. So that's what I would say.
Okay, thank you. Carla has asked, do you think starting out as a junior developer in a remote or hybrid role would be a disadvantage? So do you think it'd be better to sort of be in like an office full-time initially, or?
This might be controversial, but I'd say it's damaging to your career to be remote earlier on. Now, there are questions. If you can go into the office as much as possible, it's good for your career because you learn from the people around you. If you're remote and you're stuck and you're struggling and you're unsure, it's a lot harder for people around you to see that and support you. And when you go in, you actually learn a lot more in terms of the culture, the team around you, how they work. So I'd say if you can go in full time as much as possible to start off with, and then slowly go remote or hybrid once it gets to that.
Great, thank you. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions. I think a good one that I always like to ask people, if you don't mind answering, how you found the interview process for your role. I don't know if it had been slightly different as it was apprenticeship, but I guess if you could just talk us a bit through about your interview process for the role.
So my interview was there was nothing technical. So the task that was set was a marshmallow bridge task, which is quite popular. And if I was to give any tips for that, is they're setting that, and it might sound like a stupid test to do, or like, why are we doing this? But the reason for that is they're trying to analyze how you work as a team. And I think one of the things that set me out was before we even started building, I set out a plan of how we want to build it and have that massive enforcement at the bottom and then build it up. So that was something. So a lot of the time when you're at a boot camp, there is competition. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are looking to go into development, and it's more about setting out yourself. Don't try and change who you are, because that will never work. I was trying to do that and I was failing miserably. And when you actually be yourself, people can see that and they will be like, actually, this person would be a right fit. And a lot of the time, look into the companies as well, because different companies will have different expectations in terms of their interviews. They can have you doing 3 rounds of interviews and then technical stuff after that. But for me, there was no technical. It was more around getting to know me and what I like to do.
Great, thank you. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions for Ahmad. Ahmad is part of the Manchester Code Slack community, so I'm sure if you did have any questions, he would always be there and available for a chat.